Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage in the rainy state of Maine. Finally getting some beneficial rain. We need a lot of it. It's dry. I've never seen the lawns so burnt and the lake level so low. You have to be really careful boating not to whack your prop on something that wasn't a danger in the past because the level is low. So, last week we did a video on the Kentmore bush and driver kit for the TH400 that I bought on eBay, and I'm going to include a picture. You would have seen it by now, but I haven't done it yet because I wrap all that up at the end. But trust me, there was a picture with the part number for the whole kit that I just saw on eBay just before I started shooting the video. And there is a make offer option, and that's what I did. And I believe I paid 150 bucks, but that was a year ago-ish. So from last week's video, we had some unfinished business because the blind hole bushing removal tools, there's two of them, one for the pump stator bushings and the sun shell bushings, same remover, same installer, same bushing. And one for the tail shaft. It has its bushing all its own, and I'm hoping that this is going to remove it, but I didn't have a suitable slide hammer last week. I had made this tool, the J-809 tool handle. It does not come with the kit. You have to either source or buy this or make it. I made mine, and this is a correct installer for the tail shaft bushing. But I didn't have any way to adapt my slide hammer onto this, and I was going over my options in the video last week. I was going to build a new slide hammer, and then I got taken out raw material and decided in the end it was going to look pretty much like my snap-on one, so why not just make an adapter from 5/8 fine to 1/2 inch coarse. There we go, testing it. So I just did that, TIG welded it up. It's good to go. So now we can put that right on there. And the bolt that I used an uncoated nut that I found. I was just glad I found the 5/8 fine thread nut. And a 1/2 inch bolt, I was able to find one that didn't have any galvanizing or anything on it. It was kind of long. I could cut it off, but I decided just to put a nut on it. That way I can lock it onto the tool if I want to. And this particular slide hammer, I've learned the hard way. If you don't put this toward the handle and you flip it around, the meat of your hand will get right in there. So if I was to make one, I would have made it offset just like that, so the slapping end won't end up leaving a mark. So I'm going to put this in the vise with a rag. I've already taken a pipe wrench, and while it doesn't start biting in until about 3/4 of the way down the threads, it's cut itself in there nice and tight, and I put it in as tight as I could without really forcing it. So I hope that it's embedded itself in the bushing sufficiently, and I'm going to be able to whack it out with this. I got a lot of feedback on the bushing video, or some anyway. Some people believe this is a copy of a Kentmore tool set. I don't know, it looks pretty real to me. Definitely good quality, but we'll see if this actually does the job. I'm hoping, because this is one of the jobs I didn't really enjoy in the past. I had a bushing splitter, and I would try to split it without damaging the tail shaft, but this has potential of being a good rig. We're going to find out in a second. I would set you up if I had a better location to put the camera, but probably easier. I'm just going to clamp it in the vise with a rag like this, horizontal, thread my tool in and see what happens. So let me do that, and I'll be right back. All right, I got you set up. I hope you don't fall down. I got the slide hammer attached. I could turn the vise. I could move the bottle out of the way, but sometimes it's, well, if you're me, you get used to working with all kinds of stuff in your way. So let's just give it a few slaps. I like to hold this end, keep my hand out of the way, and just kind of see what happens. Well, that was easy. Bushing is out. That was sweet. The old bushing is perfectly round. There's no scallops or holes in it that would indicate it would have to line up with anything. The bore in the tail shaft, I mean, there is a feed hole that goes to the case journal back to this inner hole, but the bushing itself doesn't go down that far. The replacement bushings have a half moon taken out of the bottom and there's a hole stuck in the side, but it really doesn't mean a thing. You know, just for kicks, I'll line up that scallop, but I'll show you when I'm done. The bushing doesn't go in that far. So your options for installing, you can just beat it in with a hammer, or you can put it in the press. I'm looking at my press with all the stuff I got piled on it, and I guess I'm just gonna hit it with a hammer. The installation tool has a shoulder built in to stop it at what we hope is the correct depth. I guess I'm glad I lined up the scallop because it now looks like it belongs there, even though it doesn't do any difference. I'll bring the camera around and show you, but I was glad that the installation tool comes back out when you're done. That's important. And that looks like a win. That was actually pretty easy compared to my old methods. And after installing any bushing, I like to go get the mating piece, whatever that may be, and make sure everything fits together. So that's the hole that will actually hold oil. Not a bad feature. And that's the scallop and the feed hole. They really don't get that close, but it's deceiving looking at it from this angle. I'm sure this bushing fits other things where maybe that matters, but that's it. Here's one that hasn't been taken out yet. And you can see it's a similar style, but there's no holes. But it does have that. It looks like a little sawhorse there. Just a groove for oil. I was able to just clamp the old bushing in the vise and take a pipe wrench and spin the bushing right off it, so that was not a big deal. So that's pretty neat. It definitely bit in there nicely. It did the job. While we're on a roll, let's take the other one, which again, this does not have the same part number as what you're going to see in the ATSG manual. Neither did this one. These two and one little spacer were in question if you go back and watch the other video, so I'm gonna do the same deal. I'm gonna take my pipe wrench, thread that in there straight, and see what happens. All right, same deal. Slide hammer's installed. After I wound that in there, I didn't get it perfectly straight, and you kind of only have one shot at it, so it didn't want to go straight, so I hope it doesn't affect it. I did, like I say, I turned the vise a little bit to clear the bottle. This time, here we go. Boom. Let's turn around and do the back. Same deal, I just clamped it in the vise. Hope you can see me. And spin out the driver. I'm looking at the camera, it's possible you can't see me, but I clamped it here, spun it right out. Now let's set up for the next one. Here we go again. I can't help but notice that my recent love for the new lady in my life, Mrs. Dunster, if you don't know, there's Canadian donuts. Chocolate, delicious. Here we go. She's out. Took a little more work than the other ones. It's down in there a long way. The back side of the pump has a little sleeve on the stator tube you wouldn't want to damage, and that just did a really nice job. A lot nicer than when I have to go at it with my bushing splitter. You can see I managed to get that one pretty straight, and it did the job. That went really well. I have no reason not to believe that removing the bushings from the tube, the sun tube, will not be any more difficult, other than it's always a hassle to find a good way to clamp this. I don't want to get where the center support bushing rides, so I either want to grab it here or probably on the teeth it wasn't an issue when I was splitting it because I was hammering down on it, but now I have to hold it so I can pull on it. But same deal, I'm just going to use the same tool on either end. And like I mentioned, that is the same bushing as here. For installation, there are 3 different tools. We covered that in the other video. One just puts the bushings in the sun tube in flush. In the stator tube on the pump, there's 2 different drivers to install them at 2 different depths. The front and the back take a different depth, and like I've mentioned a 500,000 times, you need to decide whether you want to put the front one back in. You're always going to need the rear one, but the front one can be optional. So, this was kind of fun. I didn't plan on doing this today, but I came out to make a slide hammer, and well, the adapter was certainly easier. Fun to do a little welding. TIG welding is fun when you're working on thick stuff that you can't blow a hole in. It's nice to just practice your technique. So that's that. I'm not going to install the bushings in the pump because 1, I don't know where it's going or whether it's going to need the front one, and 2, I want to cut it in the vise, make sure it's perfectly flat, clean it up. This was one that's been sitting around, so I want to make sure the pressure regulator is not going to bind up in its bore. But this is the tube I was talking about in the back. It's really easy to do damage to it. And with these blind hole removers, technically this isn't a blind hole, but the way they sit in the tube, they may as well be. So, all right, like I said, this was fun. Hope we all learned something. And where we go next, I got a couple ideas. I don't like to do a whole lot of stripping transmission videos, but it is fun to see what's inside. I have a core that I took in that's kind of interesting. And some transmissions, when they sit, water leaks into them. Other transmissions have been run and the cooling system failed, and there's water mixed with the oil and it doesn't separate as fast. I mean, this transmission's been sitting for a long time and it still came out looking like a strawberry shake. There wasn't a whole lot of liquid in it, but it settled out in the pan somewhat, but it's never the same as just water that trickled in and went down underneath the oil, because water's always going to go to the bottom. So when it gets mechanically introduced to each other, it seems to hang on a lot longer. That's my theory anyway. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you soon. A couple days.